A female cop and her team set out on a search for a little girl who calls 911 and says her mom is not waking up. Circumstances take a horrific turn when the officer barges into her house that evening. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of these strange, mysterious, real-life stories delivered in a video format, you are at the right place, because that's all we do. We upload every day, so if that's an interest to you, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our daily uploads. Officers were busier than usual at the police station that day investigating a murder. All the helplines were busy with calls routed to various emergencies from all over the city. And then there was a strange call from a little girl. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher answered as an eerie silence sprawled in the background, followed by a loud wheezing sound on the receiver. I'm hungry. Mommy doesn't wake up all day. A little girl spoke as she burst into tears. Where are you? I don't know. Mom told me to call 911 if I'm in trouble, answered the girl, sounding terrified about something. The dispatcher then asked the girl for more details about her location. Calm down, and what is your name? The dispatcher asked. She answered, Maggie. Maggie, can you tell me your address? After a minute of grave silence, Maggie gave the dispatcher the address she lived at previously, but she didn't know where she currently was. The dispatcher tried to ask more questions in hope to find out her current location. Maggie, can you tell me about your current location? Can you describe it? Although the little girl did not know the address, she was able to give the officer visual clues to her current location. I can see big gray houses outside. There's a big angry dog barking outside as well. There are trees and a broken gate outside, Maggie said. Alright, Maggie, stay where you are. We're sending help right away, the dispatcher said. The details were then passed on to Officer Nancy, 34, and her team. They immediately left in search of the girl and arrived at the first address she had given them. The cops marched to the address and looked around for details matching the girl's description, but saw it was entirely different. Anyone in there? Nancy knocked on the door, but nobody answered. She peeped into the glass window and saw it was dark and dusty inside. It appeared that no one lived there for a long time. Nancy then checked with the neighbors and learned that a family of 3, a man, his wife, and a little girl named Maggie, used to live there. Do you know where they are now? No, officer, a man told Nancy. After Mr. Jake died in an accident 6 months ago, his wife and daughter became very poor. The landlord kicked them out because they could not afford to pay the rent. I don't know their current address, but I heard from a friend who had seen them in an impoverished area 12 miles from here. Nancy followed the clues and took off to that spot. It was getting darker, and to make things worse, the area was out of electricity. Hush! 1 second, Nancy silenced a fellow officer after hearing a faint sound of a dog barking somewhere quite far from their spot. She recalled Maggie mentioning a dog that constantly kept barking near her whereabouts. That must be it. Let's go that way. Nancy instructed her team to follow her and arrived at a small, shabby house. Nancy turned on the flashlight of her phone to get a clear view and noticed the silhouette of someone near the window. She looked closely and saw a little girl crying and waving for help. A stray dog was constantly barking outside and charged towards the cops. Nancy quickly picked up a pebble and threw it at the dog, scaring it away. Then she kicked the door open and entered the house, guessing little about what else was inside. Hey, it's okay, don't cry, Nancy said to Maggie, who ran to her crying. The girl looked distraught. I'm hungry. Mommy's not waking up all day. She's sleeping, she kept chanting repeatedly. Nancy carried Maggie outside and put her in the car. Please give her some biscuits. I'll be right back, she told her team, and went back inside to check where Maggie's mother was. She searched for the woman in every nook and corner of the house, but could not find her. As Nancy kept looking, she found a doorway to a basement. She walked in and found Maggie's mother lying unconscious on the floor. Nancy raced to the scene and touched the woman to awaken her, only to feel her cold body. Maggie's mother was dead. Officers, get in here quick! Nancy freaked out and immediately alerted medics and social services. Moments later, an ambulance arrived and took the woman's body up to be taken for an autopsy. Nancy didn't know how to disclose the news to Maggie because she had been thinking her mom was sleeping. How will I tell her that her mother is dead? Nancy wondered. Maggie ran after the ambulance, yelling and asking where are they taking her mom. Nancy stopped and held her tight and tried to comfort her. Maggie began to cry as she clutched her little teddy bear tight. When social services arrived moments later, they told Nancy that the girl would be sent to a foster home. For some reason, the cops didn't like the idea, and it hurt her more to think about the impact it would make on a 5-year-old Maggie when she learned her mom was dead. Nancy decided to take Maggie home that day to eat and to rest, and her plan was to take her to the foster home the day after. Jacob, Nancy's husband, was stunned when he answered the door and saw Nancy holding Maggie asleep in her arms. She said she'll explain everything after dinner. And I found her mother's body in the basement. Nancy narrated everything to Jacob. We are yet to find out how she died. Does the girl know that? Jacob asked. No, I don't know how to tell her. She still thinks her mother is fine in the hospital. Her heart will break when she comes to know the truth. Poor thing, but how long do we keep her with us? Jacob asked when a strange idea struck Nancy. That night after Maggie fell asleep, Darling, I was thinking, why don't we adopt Maggie? Nancy asked Jacob. We have been trying for a baby for a long time. I really don't know what's wrong with my body. The tests are fine. There are no complications, but I don't know why I'm not able to conceive. As it turned out, Nancy and Jacob could not conceive for several years. They tried every method to have babies, but to no avail. At some point, Nancy had even given up the idea of becoming a mother and began focusing entirely on her career. She was exhausted and was constantly in low spirits, assuming she could never bear a child. Being around Maggie healed her grieving heart, even if it had been just for a few hours. Honey, look at her. She's a little angel who needs parental love and support. She will be put up for adoption and some random couple will adopt her. Why don't we take her in? She's such a beautiful little miracle. What do you think? Nancy said. Jacob reflected on Nancy's words as she looked at Maggie, who was asleep between them. He felt her innocence and presence abolish the hollow in their lives and realized that this was the joy he had craved all his life. It did not matter to him that Maggie was not his biological child. According to him, a family was about love and affection, not genetics. Jacob agreed to the adoption, but the next big challenge was how Maggie would react to seeing her mother's funeral. The next day, Nancy left Maggie at the foster home, promising to come for her soon, and took her to her mother's funeral 2 days later. Anxiety kicked in as Nancy led Maggie to her mother's coffin. She didn't know how to tell the little one that her mother had died of a heart attack, as revealed in the autopsy report. Honey, stay right here. This place is so quiet, isn't it? She tried, distracting Maggie. Yes, full of butterflies and flowers and candles. And what are these crosses for? And what's in that black box? Maggie asked. Poor Maggie didn't know that it was a coffin that held her mother's lifeless body. Sweetheart, sometimes when God loves us and becomes overly protective of us, He invites us to His house in heaven and we can live there with Him forever. Nancy answered. A house in heaven? Maggie was shocked. Honey, your mommy has gone to live with God, and she told me to take care of you. You will know everything when you become big, Nancy added. Nancy's heart ripped apart as she could not explain further to naive Maggie. Tears endlessly streamed down her eyes as she hugged the girl tight and realized it was time to take the next most significant decision of her life. A few months later, Jacob and Nancy adopted Maggie and threw a lavish party for friends and family to celebrate their joy. Jacob raised a toast as laughter filled the party hall. I thought the happiest day of my life was when I met Nancy, he began. But I was wrong. I was the happiest when I saw my wife holding a little miracle asleep in her arms. And when she asked me, honey, can we be her parents? I couldn't deny the pleasure of becoming a dad. Cheers to my happy little family of 3. No, honey, wait, not 3, Nancy interrupted Jacob, who was shocked. "We are going to be a happy little family of 4, she revealed, handing him an envelope with a positive pregnancy test. Jacob could not believe his eyes and was indeed the happiest man on earth. Nancy's prayers were answered most beautifully at the right time. Happy little family of 4, everyone. Jacob raised the toast as tears of joy gushed from his eyes.